You actually have to be on cocaine to be on this podcast? Cocaine. Cocaine, really? Cocaine. Cocaine, really?
What is up, everybody? You're listening to yet another edition of Cocaine Willie, the official K-State representative on the College Huddle. I am your commissioner, Bob Trollsby, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, the good chef, Andre Napier, and Fireball Matt Marchesini is still out of the country, but he will be back soon. Don't worry. I know we got a lot of Fireball Matt stands out there, but rest assured, we've brought back, four-time recurring guest, Joe Tillery.
For the
Hey,
things.
coming back again.
Hey, anytime. Always glad to talk some ball with the fellas, man. Thanks for having me back.
And I mean, you're at this point, you're just Fireball Matt's permanent stand-in. So whenever
sounds like
Matt's
great.
gone, you're the first call. I mean,
That's the way to play. I think
you were also my first call on Saturday night when I had one too many drinks and was like, hey, do we want to do a post game?
Dude,
And
that was
like, I'm in bed.
that was killer. I texted Bob back. I saw it later when I exposed the DMs here. I was like, we were hanging out. My dad got inducted into his high school Hall of Fame this week.
Hey. Awesome.
And so shout out Pops one time. He went in and we were up late celebrating. It was like 2 a.m. And I checked my Twitter DMs. I see Bob's message. I was like, hell yeah, I'm in. Then I text back. And I'm like, the only issue is 2:09 a.m. too late to start this thing. So it was a late one there.
Meanwhile, I had fallen asleep. So like I sent you that DM, I think at like 10:30 or something.
Right.
I fell asleep at like 11:15 and then woke up on the couch at 1:30. And I'm like, I'm going to bed. So I got your tweet when I woke up the next morning. So you were up later than I was after all.
Yeah, it was well, I'm glad I tell you what, that would have been some extra bonus content right there. 2 a.m.
That would have been nuts content.
That would have
After
been
the game. I mean, it was just people had so many mixed feelings after the game. It would have been surprising to hear what you guys had to say about it.
It would have been something. We may or may not have lost a sponsor after that, but in lieu of that, this beer crack right here is brought to you by Anime's Parlor, located at 616 North 12th Street in the heart of Aggieville in Manhattan, Kansas. Anime's has been in business for 50 years and is an absolute must-visit destination on school nights and game days alike. Anime's is absolutely my favorite destination in Aggieville. I'm very bummed I'm not going to be able to make it back to visit my auntie, but every time I do go back to the Little Apple, I make a point to visit her. So they feature a wide variety of craft cocktails, draft beers, everything in between, along with live music, comedy, and all sorts of other events every single week. And I think we already mentioned it on the previous pod this week, but tomorrow night, they're doing an event, and I already forgot what it was, but it was a really cool event. So I'm going to pull it up on their website here, and it is Boot Hill Jazz Night is going to be tomorrow night on November 1st as you're listening to this, ideally on Halloween, spooky, scary. But check them out. Check out Boot Hill Jazz Night, but that's tomorrow night, and they're doing a ton of cool stuff all the time. So if you're in the Manhattan area, or if you're just nearby and want a good excuse to get back to Manhattan, visit them at 616 North 12th Street in the heart of Aggieville, and be sure to tell them Cocaine Willie sent you. The show is also brought to you by Pat's Beef Jerky, located at 401 Main Street in Liebenthal, Kansas. Pat's has been serving the finest beef jerky in the Midwest for 34 years strong, and they feature mouthwatering flavors like the classic beef jerky, the teriyaki beef jerky, and my personal favorite, the savory beef pepper sticks. There are 3 places where you can get yourself some Pat's Beef Jerky. You can pick it up in person at either the Fridge Liquor Store in Manhattan or at their original store at 401 Main Street in Liebenthal, Kansas. And last but not least, you can get your Pat's Beef Jerky online at www.patsbeefjerky.com. They've shipped to all 50 states, so there's no reason not to order. Use the promo code CATS at checkoff to get 10% off your next order, and visit www.patsbeefjerky to place your order today. All right, guys. So before we get into some hoops talk, because we are currently, as we're recording this, playing a exhibition matchup against the Fort Hays State Tigers, which you can never let that one trip you up, because as we all know, if you're overlooking that matchup, they might just jump up and get you. But I do want to get your thoughts coming out of the KU game. Let's just do kind of one headline per person and your main takeaway from the matchup in the 29-27 win, keeping the Governor's Cup in Manhattan as it rightfully belongs.
First, I mean, the first headline that I would think, or like storyline that happened from the game, golly, I don't know. It's really just the resilience of the team, because there was moments in that game where they could have folded. I mean, realistically, like when they got the turnover, when Avery gets that turnover down in like the 20-yard, I think it was near the 20-yard line or so. I mean, that was a killer. That was a killer. And if it wasn't for a Jalen Daniel, if it wasn't for a Daniels fumble late with a recovery by Mott, I mean, where does this game go? But they just kept battling, and it really showed towards the end. And my guy, Chris Tennant, showing up. My guy.
Bang.
I mean, literally my guy. I will pull receipts if anybody tries to take credit for Chris Tennant other than me, because I always believed in the boy. And man, if he boomstick that thing, and he went to the top of the list of my favorite gifts of all time that I've ever made. That, the home run celebration during the World Series. I mean, that is just clutch field goaling by number 17, a 51-yarder. That is absolutely awesome. And then that's where the resiliency comes in, because they take that lead, that final one, and there's a minute 44 left, similar to the Colorado game where you take a late lead and the defense, as much as they struggled, they put the resiliency suit on and showed up on that last. And Klanderman just said, fuck it, we're going to go all out blitzes. VJ, you're the fastest guy on the field. Get over there and get after him. And that's what happened. It was beautiful. It was beautiful.
I think maybe this is a pivot and a cop-out. I'm going to combine two into one here. The first one, at the point in this game, my vocabulary had pretty much just switched to only saying cats periodically. Positive or negative, it was just a quick cats. Essentially, that was kind of the entirety of the second half for me. But my biggest takeaway actually didn't happen on the football field. My biggest takeaway from this game is the fact that there were 80 different high-name recruits in attendance for this football game watching the state of Kansas battle. I mean, you saw KU K-State. And I don't think anyone's going to sit here and say, oh, this streak will continue another 16. I don't think anyone's going to say that. What you continue to see about this is it's not a way to say Kansas State's always going to play better than KU. They're not always going to be the better team. They have the better coaching staff. I truly think that. Jalen Daniels played incredible in this football game. Avery Johnson made the right plays. He had his one, slip up there towards the end of the game. But at some point, you look at this as a high school recruit and say, unless I'm wanting to start something new or try to be the first to do something at this, or not the first, but the first in 16 years, most of these recruits have seen maybe 2 games in their life that KU has beaten K-State. Everybody on the sideline has seen 1 or 2 games of that happening. It blows my mind when you sit there as a high major, 5-star kid. Jax Deneen from the state of Iowa, Cooper DeJean, or not Janine, Jax DeJean, not Jet Deneen or the Deneen family. That's going to be a tough one if he commits to K-State. But DeJean's there, 5-star kid. Ian Premer from Great Bend, the 4-star tight end there. There's another 4-star tight end there. There are so many big names. I mean, I'm huge on some of these guys that are there. And there also happens to be 60 more dudes that I'm incredibly excited about. I mean, you look at the recruiting class this season, EMAW 25, some studs. Obviously, there's Lincoln Cure. Obviously, there's been a couple of recent commitments as well. The big thing that you see is guys inside the top 500. And ratings aren't everything because this coaching staff, I mean, they do everything with guys that are 2-stars, with guys that are unranked. I mean, DJ Gibbons is out there. You saw Felix as a first-rounder after being a 2-star kid that was going to just be a student at Missouri. You see what they can do with these underranked and under-recruited guys. Deuce, Coop, etc. There are so many dudes that are in that top 500, in the top 400 that just passed K-State. This year we had 2 kids inside the top 500 in the recruiting class for EMA 25. There was legitimately, I think I counted 20 different kids inside the top 500 visiting K-State for this game. And I'm not saying you're going to bet, even 25% of that. But think about the possibility of where Chris Kleiman goes from here with guys that start out as 4- and 5-star guys, what their development looks like after a year or two. I mean, you consider a guy like Lincoln Cure, you could be a Brock Bowers and be the best tight end in football, especially at a team that has the most tight end receiving touchdowns of any team in the country. Things that I saw from this game, obviously you take away great things on the field, but were things that got it done on the field. The biggest thing for me is what the future ahead looks like because of this pivot point here.
That's a phenomenal point. And we don't talk a ton of recruiting on this show, but you bring
We need
up,
to. We need to.
you bring
God
up
dang
we
it, Joe.
talk
You
about
get
it a decent amount. So much of that information is paywalled, but like a lot of it
True.
isn't at the same time. So from I typically when I'm coming up with outlines and stuff, I try to just stay away from like, oh, I'm just gonna lift this from K-State Online or Go Power.
Right.
But dude, you bring up a great point, and I honestly had no idea that Cooper DeJean's brother was at the game on Saturday, but that's amazing.
Athlete too.
That is amazing. That gets me pretty excited. Maybe probably won't win the recruiting battle, but who knows? We've won more competitive battles in the past.
True.
And hey, if he goes somewhere else, he can always come back after a year like Dylan Edwards did. But my headline or my takeaway from this game is starting to become a theme of this season. And I said it, I mentioned Go Power Cat. I was on the K-State Insiders last night as we're recording this Tuesday. So I was on that Monday episode of K-State Insiders. So check that out if you haven't yet. But Fitz just asked, what was I thinking coming out of that win? For me, it's winning 1-score games. And that's been a theme this season where you flip the coin and those go the other direction. This is a team that record's not looking very good. This team isn't ranked probably if those games go the other direction. And it's a theme that in 2022, we saw a lot of the same thing. Like you are finding a way to win in those 1-score matchups where you weren't in 2023. And I think this team only won one of those 1-score games last year where they probably should have gotten the dub, and you drop, 3 or 4 of those games last year. This year, that's not the case. And the BYU game doesn't count because that was a 38-9 drubbing of K-State. So that's far from a 1-score game. Definitely not. So you can't really flip the outcome of that one. But for the sake of just being able to come out on the right side of those victories, finding ways to win where maybe the win isn't just, a given, it's not handed to you. The other team might be making mistakes. You have to be able to capitalize on that. And this team is doing that and doing so effectively, because when you have a punt that gets down at the 1-yard line and you get a safety off of that and you end up winning the game by 2 points, that says a lot about what this team is doing this year that they weren't able to do last year.
Yeah, let's talk about, we don't want to get too far into the weeds of this game, but I would love to talk to you guys about it because I haven't talked to really anybody except for my wife, where I'm chatting up her ear about this game, and my best friend Tim, who lost $300 because we didn't cover that game. But shout out to Tim Spencer, my guy, love you.
Shout out Tim.
Yeah. So this game, and when I listen to podcasts all day, every day, basically just any kind of content about the Cats, I'm going to drown myself in it. And the theme that I'm getting is like what was left out there on both sides. The KU guys are going to have all the excuses in the world of what was left out there. And the K-State fans are the exact same way of what we left out there. The Will Ancio drop in the end zone, the fumble by Avery Johnson in the red zone, and KU obviously the same way with the Skinner drop and all that stuff. How do you guys feel about that? Like, do you guys take away the game the exact same way that they do? Because I don't look at it that way at all. Like, the game happened. That's what it was. There's no, we could have won by 14 or this, that, or the other. Do you guys, it's not a moral victory or, whatever, but how do you guys look at games when it comes to after the fact?
I think this is going to sound blunt enough to say, but you lost. I think Lance Leipold said it perfectly. He's like, there's a time for moral victories. We're a 2-6 football team. That's not very good. And it's like sometimes I go back to the drawing board, and this will be probably a theme in basketball early on in the season. At some point, if you should have won the game, you would have won the game. If you should have lost the game, you would have lost the game. there are very, very, very few experiences, maybe 1 out of 100 games where it's like, we played the worst game I've ever seen. How do we win this football game? Like, especially in college football. You see that sometimes with the Chiefs. If you're a Chiefs guy, basically you hate your life for 2.5 hours, and then the last 30 minutes, you're like, all right, great, pulled it off. But you don't see that as much in the college football world. Sometimes you will, but very few cases where you see massive one-sided blowout. Somehow the last 10 minutes of the end, they'll rally back. It takes a lot of momentum and a lot of stuff there. You can talk about it from a KU perspective and say, oh, if Jalen holds on to the football, he's still short of the line to gain. It's bringing up a crucial third down, and you're still outside of field goal range. There's so many things that are what-if moments that I don't think people keep in perspective. They say, well, if Avery doesn't fumble there, that last drive doesn't even matter. Everything's here and there. We're going to score. If, you have the tight end drop taken back, if you score a touchdown, at some point you got to look at it as, did we win or did we lose? Does the score sheet say we have 2 losses and we're basically knocked out of the Big 12 title race unless something crazy happens? Or does it say 1 loss, we're still in the thick of it, and one of the best teams in the league? So I don't know. Sometimes I get that way where I'm like, man, I wish people would just take it and move on. Even when it's a gross performance and it's like, man, I feel bad about that. Sometimes I'm like, brother, we pulled it off. What are we sad about here?
I'm the exact same way. Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
Well, Chef, you mentioned kind of off the top, you mentioned the resilience of the team and their ability to, despite the flaws, despite the adversity of Avery fumbling it practically in the red zone on a drive
out of nowhere.
That was tough.
Like those situations and situations where you're taking a field goal instead of a touchdown, like that's just going to happen. That is college football, to your point, Joe. And the football team this year is winning in situations where last year they wouldn't have. And that's where my headline comes into play of, you're winning those 1-score games. You're finding ways to win. And sometimes it's going to be ugly. It's not going to be pretty, but like a win is a win at the end of the day. And it doesn't matter when you're looking at this in 4 weeks and you're looking at the college football playoff rankings. It doesn't matter if you have just 1 conference loss and you win out the rest of the way, that you only beat KU by 2 points. That's not going to matter at the end of the day. You're going to make it to Arlington, and you're going to be competing for a possible opportunity to make the college football playoff. Yeah. So that's all that matters at this point. You get the win, you move on, you make adjustments, and you fix whatever you can week to week. But this is a big matchup heading into this Houston game of, okay, are there some things that we can fix and tweak and tighten up going into this matchup against Houston, knowing that they're a worse competition than KU, knowing that they're probably the easiest team you're going to be playing since non-conference schedule. And I mean, you're going to be going into a bye next week. So you're going to have time to get healthy after that and hopefully have some recovery and give the team a little bit of a break. This is one of those rare opportunities where you get, once every few years, you get these double bye, double idle seasons. Like, you got to be able to take advantage of that. So if you can come out with the win on Saturday, whether it's ugly or pretty, I don't care. Right. Get the win, go into the bye, get healthy, and just get ready to smack Cincinnati, Arizona State, and Iowa State.
That's my point. Like, we're week 9 into the season. Like, I understand, like, week 2, we're complaining about Tulane. Like, what, the defense is not this, Avery's not that. It's week 9. We're going into the dog days. We're about to be in November. This is the final stretch of it. We ain't got time to be worried about, like, oh, we should have did this. We could fix this. There's no fixing. This is the team. This is what we got. And if you don't like how we run this certain kind of play or how we're tackling, like, you're not going to fix tackling in November, brother. That's a summer thing. That's when you're practicing tackling. If we can't tackle now, we probably can't tackle. And
Ryan said in the Houston preview, he said, well, tackling will be something that they can fix. To your point, you're like, you can't fix tackling. It's broken. Also, it's not going to get fixed.
How likely are you to fix tackling when you're facing a running back that's 212, 6'1", and doesn't get tackled at all?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm like. People are like, and that's the other thing. Now we're just going down a rabbit hole of, just me complaining about, like, what I hear through my ear holes. But
Chef,
anybody that's picked a game or made a score prediction of anything, like, the score was 29-27. Did you think we were going to hold Kansas, who everybody thought was a relatively good team outside of their record, to 0 points? What's the point of making a prediction and having your thoughts out there if at the end of the game they score 27 and you're like, oh, our team is terrible? What did you think was going to happen? How did you think those points were going to happen? They don't just magically appear on the scoreboard. They drive down the field and they score touchdowns. It sucks. Nobody wants to see their team get scored on, but that's part of the game. Like, there's no reason to get nervous. If you think Kansas is going to score 24 points, you got to live with them scoring 24 points, however it comes. Don't be nervous. Don't be upset. That's just what it is. They're on scholarship too for a reason. I can't listen to the complaints over this team is not good. We should have blown them out. No, we shouldn't have. No, we should not have. Why would we have blown them out? Because we blew them out 5 years ago? That's not how football works, brother. I just don't like that, and that's my soapbox.
You're spot on there. Also, my dad always likes to poke my buttons. He's not a K-State fan, but would give me a hard time about it, and I'm like, I just have to walk away for a minute. But the essential thing is you're losing. You're not losing, but you're competing with a team that's 2-6. If we took away the records and you said week 1 before the season started, hey, K-State beats KU in Manhattan 29-27. I think everybody, especially with the preseason expectations of what Kansas would be, would say that makes sense. It's maybe even low scoring for what people would think. Maybe it's 35-31, whatever the case is. A 2-point game, you're like, yeah, they're getting better. They're a good football team. There is something, and there's 2 things, I guess. The thing that comes back to me, it's a rivalry game. This isn't Houston. I love Willie Fritz. I don't love him when he's playing against us. But the point of what I'm saying is, if we're sitting here and saying, okay, we only won by 2 against a 2-6 football team and blah, 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 they've led in every single fourth quarter to this point. There has been so many good flashes for them and then one mistake. They find ways to lose games, whereas Kansas State's the opposite of that. You can look bad for 3 quarters, then figure it out late. But you just see this idea of people not chalking up what this rivalry is in college football because you get, hey, this team is quite literally outside of the bowl game and 6-6 in the guaranteed rate bowl. They don't want to be there for that. You know what I mean? They don't want to do that type of stuff, especially with their preseason expectations, seniors coming back, whatever the case is. You're not really playing for much anymore. You have the opportunity to smack your in-state rival who's beaten you 16 times straight.
No, Joe. Come back, Joe.
Apologies to anybody who's listening or watching that. We had a slight audio issue, but Joe is back. Joe, continue your diatribe coming into that KU match or coming out of the KU matchup.
Yeah, I apologize. Technology is a bit of a grind here, fellas. But, yeah, I think sometimes people lose the idea that it is a rivalry matchup. And KU quite literally has nothing to play for besides a regular bowl game at this point. They don't want to be sitting there at 6-6. I mean, they want it more than being 5-7, but you're just not at the point where you're competing for where you wanted to be at the beginning of the year. And at some point, you have to understand you have the opportunity to smack your in-state rival right in the mouth in their town, break the streak of 15-plus years. You're playing for the one thing you can play for that season, and it's to beat your rival. And maybe that's me, discrediting the team for what it's worth, but this was a game that I don't think anybody, even as the week went on, felt great about. It's still got a high-flying offense. You got 3 dudes that are probably going to be, never recovered the entire second half in Grimm and Skinner and the other kid. But you just at some point understand that, hey, it's a rivalry. College football, anybody can beat anybody. Doesn't matter if you're 0-6, 6-0, whatever the case is, you're going to get a little bit of everything. But at some point, I think K-State and KU fans, this rivalry is one of the greatest rivalries in college football. Similar how I feel to Farmageddon, obviously different circumstances this year in terms of overall team. But sometimes I think the ugly wins, and this is a little bit different than what I was saying earlier, the ugly wins make you win better. At some point, they make you a better football team. The same reason I think Tulane was bad for the majority of the game, Avery learned lessons there. That BYU loss, a loss was a loss. You learned a lesson there. I talk about it on my channel sometimes. If you can win, or if you can learn in moments with wins rather than learning in a loss, you're going to be so much better down the stretch. Because when you chalk up these losses, at some point that matters. But if you have one loss or you figure it out just with no losses and bad wins, that's such a better season than having quality losses for five games of the season. So I don't know. Some of that stuff doesn't quite get discussed in the right nature, I think, sometimes.
Well, let's close this chapter on the KU game, and I want to get your thoughts on this matchup against Houston coming into it, and we'll get to locks, we'll get to the Big 12 fantasy stuff. We'll do that here in a minute, but we just wrapped up our episode that we recorded with Ryman. So Houston coming into this game isn't the best game. I mean, they're not the best team. When you look at everything on paper, statistically, this team is pretty awful. And I'm not trying to sugarcoat it. I was having a really hard time finding good things to pull out about that team. And it's few and far between. Like they are like 17th in the country in one statistical category that was like kind of impressive, but it was definitely a stretch even. I don't even remember what it was, but it wasn't. Oh, it was in 18th in the nation in yards per game allowed, 317.9 yards per game allowed. That's the only category they're relatively decent in. Everything else is negative. Zeon Chriss is 11th in the country in total turnover so far this season, and he hasn't even played outside. I mean, he's started 2 games for Houston so far. The rest has been in cleanup duty or coming in to relieve Donovan Smith. They don't have a single receiver above 200 yards. And y'all were, I mean, everybody was ripping our wide receiver room for not doing nearly enough this season. But you've got Jace Brown with 600 plus yards or close to it. It's just, this team is very bad. I mean, rushing wise, yeah, they've got 3 guys with 200 plus yards, but it's kind of like, okay, great. K-State's rushing defense is good. And KU got their chunk yards here and there, but you also held Devin Neal to below the yardage he needed to get to break the KU single season record. So I still feel great about the rushing defense, even though they gave up more yards against KU than they do against most opponents. But I don't feel like this game should even be remotely close. And I'm going to regret saying that because it's going to end up being like a 3-point game.
That's how
it works.
That's how I see it. I see it as it's just I mean, the stats are the stats. You know, KU was terrible. I mean, against the run, technically, I mean, they still gave up a shit ton of run yards to us. We got what we wanted on the ground. We averaged like 6.5 yards per carry or whatever, but it just didn't feel that way. And then, you know, Houston, they're bad. They are stinky poo-poo, and it's well documented. But at what point does it not become about the stats and it becomes about human nature? And the human nature side of it is that K-State just played their rival at home. Now they got to go on the road. And can you get a bunch of 18 to 23-year-old guys to get up for this game versus the maybe the worst team in the conference? Well, second worst team in the conference, because
I mean they're ahead of Utah. In some categories.
Yeah.
And they've got 2 conference
State
wins, which is ahead of Oklahoma State, Arizona, and Utah.
Exactly. So what I was saying is, can you get these kids to rally the troops and give it all they got for the last, back quarter of the season? Can you get them to do that? And Chris Kleiman is a motivator, but at some point that is going to be the issue. And I think that's the only real issue that we haven't seen yet from this season, because every team seems like they go through that at least one time during the season. And I think this might be our time. I think we'll still win, but I definitely feel like it's going to be a close game. And I'm not excited about that.
And just real quick, so to cover off on the standings, Houston is currently 2-3, and they're ahead of 5 teams that were probably in the top 7 of the conference coming into the season. Oklahoma State is 0-5. KU, Utah, UCF, and Arizona are all 1-4.
Big 12. Oh, that's crazy. Yeah, I think actually, and maybe this is just a non-ball knower take from your boy here, so I'll admit that in advance. I almost don't feel like this team's going to have trouble getting up for this game. Not because the game matters. I'm not going to sit here and say that. But there are a couple guys that still feel the pissed off nature of that Willie Fritz Tulane loss a little bit. And Chris Kleiman knows, hey, we were a better team, or we were supposed to be the better team that day. We weren't. We got beat. You cannot play down to these guys because they will beat you. I don't know that I worry about this. And maybe it's just the difference in Avery Johnson seems like the ultimate dude that's ready for every moment. Got the chip on his shoulder, understands what it takes to win, to be a leader. I almost feel like because they had so many teachable moments, or because they started as slow as they did, or played honestly as poorly as they did against KU, we know that it's a rivalry game. We know they won. Honestly, a lot of those things, Chris Kleiman can sit here and say, look what happened when we let them into this game. Hey, this happened here. This happened here. Look what they were able to do. We cannot do that again. We have to start faster. And I think you're right, because it is human nature that guys are tired, guys are beat up, guys are ready for a rest. I think there's a little bit more of that. We have to finish strong to get over this hump, to get to that resting point. Then we can adjust from there. But the way they're looking at it, it's 2/3 of the season. You had the first 4. You had the second 4, your second bye week, then you're locked in for the back few. I feel like this team's going to be ready. Also, the adjustment of not having to play in the middle of the night is a good change. Not playing at 7 p.m. or at 9:15 p.m. or wherever you're at. You feel like you're up till 1:30 in the morning watching these games. Granted, we love the Cats, we do it, but it's a long next day. I think the fellas are going to appreciate they can play at 2:30, a rival stadium that's likely going to be quiet. It's not necessarily a stadium that, hey, we have a top 25 team coming in here. Let's all pack the stadium and surprise them. Houston's fan base in terms of football at the moment still isn't quite Big 12 ready. I don't think anybody's going to dispute that. I don't think Houston fans would dispute that, to be honest with you. Though I do, the ones I have met are very, very kind and cool. I feel like this is going to be a stadium you understand where, hey, we cannot start slow. We have to win this football game. And I feel confident they have the leaders in place for that. Also, last quick thought. Chris Tennant bombing that 51-yard field goal makes them play good for this game. I don't know what it is. The magic's there. I feel the magic on that.
That was Chef's preseason MVP of the season.
That's awesome.
And that's
awesome.
Aging, I don't know if he's the MVP of the season, but he was definitely the MVP of that game, because that was elite stuff from Chris Tennant. Chef, do you have some overs and unders for us for this game? And let's cover off on last week's too. I did this episode completely backwards, by the way. So if you're listening to this or watching this, we're just going to do it backwards. So we'll get to locks and fantasy in a minute.
Yeah, let's go over last week's, because I'm still kind of scrambling for over-unders for this week. I think it's going to be this past over-under.
Can we do fan attendance for the Houston game? That could be
It's going to be so hard, because the number is going to be so off, because if you listen to the pod that we just had, he said that there was a 28,000 announced for that game, but there was probably maybe 11 to 12 in the stadium. So we'll go off a fake number. That is a good over under. We'll set the over under. We'll get to there. I'll think of a number. But going over last week's, and I think this were our best over unders in terms of the questions. We did Kansas players represented by K-State on offense and defense only. I set the number at 16.5. Joe, you went over. I went over. Bob went under, and the number was 17. Wow. I mean, that's a perfect number.
Money.
Couldn't have got any closer. And, the final straw was really Nikendre Steiger, and he made the difference. Local players to score touchdowns. I said it at 4.5. Our boy Dylan Edwards did not get in the end zone, and that wasn't the difference, but it would have made it a lot closer. Joe, you went over. Me and Bob went under, and the number was 3. The number was 3. Yuck. Over under K-State's halftime lead at 6.5 points. That was not the score. Was not pretty. We went in at a 2-point lead. Bob went under. Me and Joe went over. So I was 2 for 3. No. Yes, I was 2 for 3 that week. Bob, you were 2 and 3. Joe, you were 1 and 3. Sorry, brother.
That's right where I want to be, Life's too short to bet the under these days.
Yeah, there's no bag for this one, but
True.
You were the low man on the totem pole for over-unders. This week's over-unders, I think the fan attendance one is a fun one.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is a good number to set it at. I think I'm going to set it at.
Take a peek in the chat. I just gave you the average attendance through 4 games.
Ooh, okay, let me see what this is. This is great podcasting, but I'm gonna guess that the number. Where's it at in the chat? In this chat. My bad. Gotcha. 26,821 average.
So they've had attendance of 28,251, 25,138, 25,750, and 28,146. The high point came in this matchup against Utah. And prior to that, the high point was against their hated rival Rice in the
Okay,
Bible.
so let's think about this for a second. They won this game, which was their high point of their season. It's a blackout game on a back-to-back home stretch right here. So I'm going to set the number at 27.5.
So 27,500.
Yes.
I'm going to go over strictly because there are a lot of K-State Texans. And I think they're going to make it. They're going to make it competitive.
I also think that, man, when you haven't been a very good football team and you get a cool theme night like a blackout, there's going to be those on the fence fans that show up for that. You know, you're going to get the dorm fans that are like, you know, I guess I'll go. We're around. I'm going to roll over as well.
I like it. I'm going to go over. We're all betting the over on that. And that's just obviously on brand for our gargantuan brand of Kansas State. It's everybody's Super Bowl. It makes sense. I'm going to go rushing touchdowns for Kansas State in this game. And I'm setting it at 2.5. Now, this is important because Avery is thrown for almost, he's coming into his own in terms of passing the ball. And DJ Giddens had a good game versus West Virginia, but it really depends on what you think the score is going to be of this Houston game. I got it 28-24, so I don't think there's a lot of rushing touchdowns out there just touchdowns in general. That's 4 touchdowns. So I got it. I'm going under 2.5 rushing touchdowns.
I'm going to go under as well, strictly because their rushing defense is better than their passing defense, which is garbage. So give me the under.
I think K-State puts up 40 in this game. I really do. Woo! I'm feeling good about it. I'm feeling good about it, boys. But, yeah, DJ hasn't found the end zone much. Dylan hasn't gotten the carries enough to justify. Avery's been on a bit of a kick. But I will apprehensively take the over since you two both went under, just for the sake of spicing it up.
I like it. Getting spicy. Okay. Yes, so now let's think about this. We got to go defensive on this one. And Houston, Bob, you laid it out perfect. They are a turnover team. They love turning that damn ball over. And if it's Zion, what is his name? Zeon Chriss?
Yeah, Zeon, I think.
Zeon
Chriss. Let's set the over under for Zeon Chriss fumbles, not necessarily turnover fumbles, but just the ball hits the deck.
And not recovered necessarily.
Not necessarily recovered. Yeah. We're going to set it at 1.5.
This is the 11th highest quarterback. Or no, this is the player, not just quarterback. He's 11th in the country in total turnovers.
So we're going fumbles for him. Ball hits the ground, coming from Zeon Chriss' hands at 1.5.
Total fumbles, not total.
All right, I'll go first. Yeah. I feel good about this thing. Hear me out. It's going to be under.
I'm listening.
It's going to be under because Houston, the last 4 games, has not had one quarterback finish that game consistently. You've had Donovan Smith jump in. You've had Zeon Chriss jump in and vice versa. Granted, both dudes have turned the rock over like a pastry. Those dudes are tossing it to everybody. But I will say under because I do think at some point we see Donovan Smith in this football game, especially if Houston's offense starts off slow.
I'm going to go over. I like how Romaine always finds a way to get the ball on the ground coming from quarterbacks. I think Romaine causes one, and I think there's going to be a blindside strip sack from who knows? Maybe it's Brennan Mott leading the league in sacks. Our boy Mott.
Dude, Big Salad, by the way. Greatest nickname I've ever heard. Want that to be known.
What is it?
Big Salad for Austin Romaine.
Oh, yes.
Dude, Big Salad. Killer. I think it was either Scott Wildcat or one of those guys. I saw it on Twitter this week, and I was like, that is incredible, dude.
I think it was Scott's dad, if I remember right. I think he gave him the Boomer Award on Bosco's Boys. Chef, was it 1.5 is what you said?
1.5 fumbles hitting the deck.
For just Zeon Chriss.
Just Zeon Chriss.
I'm going to go
That's a
under.
lot for one player.
I'm going to go under.
Okay.
But I
went over.
I don't like it.
I like it.
Okay. Well, we're going to move on to our favorite segment, locks. And our Big 12 fantasy starters. Our Week 10 locks, as always, are sponsored by Anime's Parlor. We'll give you the rundown on where we're at in the standings so far. So, Fireball Matt went 2-3 last week. So Chef closes the gap a little bit on Fireball Matt's lead on the season so far. Matt is 26-19 overall on the season. He is 2 games ahead of Chef, who sits behind him, just waiting to pounce. 24-21 record overall. Matt had UCF minus 1.5 versus BYU. That did not hit. He had Colorado minus 5.5 versus Cincinnati. That hit. He missed on Arizona minus 3 versus West Virginia. Arizona's officially cooked in my book.
Big cook.
National game. Wisconsin, he missed +7 versus Penn State. And he hit on Hawaii minus 2 versus Nevada. Chef went 3-2 on the week. He hit on Colorado minus 5.5. He hit on BYU +1.5. He missed on the cooked Arizona Wildcats. He hit on the national game of Notre Dame minus 12.5 points over Navy. And he missed in the first game that was played before this episode aired last week.
So disrespectful.
He made his pick on Tuesday, and he picked Liberty minus 25 against Kennesaw State to give the Owls their first win of the year.
That is so disgusting. I don't even know where to begin. I feel so disrespected by Liberty. I don't know what actual religion they follow, but they're gonna be damned for what they did to my boys.
If they weren't already damned for hiring the guy that covered up rape at Baylor as their athletic director, then they're going to be damned for doing this. But
yeah,
I went 3-2 on the week. I hit on BYU +1.5 at UCF. I missed on Okie State +7 at Baylor, which, dude, that should have been a backdoor cover. That was so freaking close to being one too. Texas Tech backdoor covered at TCU +6.5. So that saved me a little bit there. And Illinois had an opportunity to backdoor cover at Oregon, and it didn't happen. So that one missed for me. And I also hit on my sickos game of Georgia State +8 at App State. So I'm running like 4 in a row now. So I'm just going to keep riding the hot hand with that one. Joe, you went 3-2 on the week last week. So good week for you as well. Going up above 500, you're winning money in that case. So that's
big brain, Joe. Big brain.
You hit on BYU +1.5 at UCF. You missed on Utah -3.5 against the vaunted Houston Cougars. You hit on Colorado -5.5 against Cincinnati. You missed on LSU +2.5 in a drubbing by Colin Klein's Texas A&M Aggies.
That was tough.
And you hit on the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors +1 in their matchup against Nevada. So for any Veep fans out there, Nevada. Anyone can kick it off because all 3 of us were 3-2. We don't have a bag boy because bag boy's in freaking Portugal eating whatever they eat in Portugal.
What do they eat in Portugal?
Like paella is a Spanish.
Yeah.
Rizo is a Spanish thing.
I mean, they got a lot of heavy influences from Spain.
Something pork based.
Maybe. Shout out to Ronaldo, Portugal's finest. I'm gonna go Tech +13.5 versus Iowa State. Iowa State, they're funny about this because I feel like they let a lot of teams hang around with these huge numbers, and Tech, their quarterback is, I think Baron Morton's hurt. Not great. And the Hammond kid, he's kind of okay outside of getting absolutely depleted in the final moments of that game and fumbling the game away. I'm going to take 13.5 points, though. That's such a big number.
Here's the other thing about the Big 12 slate this week. Like, if you're not picking the K-State game, we all have to pick the same games.
Yeah.
Like, we have to pick the same 3 games, and they're all really disgusting lines. I hate all of these lines. I didn't like a single one.
Now I'm going to take the Cowboys +3. Oklahoma State +3. I think they're gonna be able to do some things. Hopefully Garrett Rangel's back. I'm not entirely sure if that's the case, but even without Rangel, Bowman's due
I
to
think
have
he's done
one
for the
game.
year.
Is he done for the year?
I think he's done for the year.
Oh, damn.
And Flores is hurt too, right?
Flores
Zane-
is also done for
yeah.
the year.
It's Bowman.
like,
it's
dude,
the
what?
Bowman show.
How?
Watch the Bowman show up on this game. +3 at home.
What's
Come
the
on,
over-under
Oklahoma.
on picks for Bowman in that one for you?
Oh, my
I'm not
God.
joking. I'm like,
I
1.5.
I'd probably said it at 1.5.
okay. That's your
Maybe
twin
1.5
brother,
if you're
Joe.
feeling-
Alan
Hey,
Bowman is your twin brother.
That's my guy, man. I
Is
still
he,
have that
is he
photo.
older or younger than you?
I think he's older than. Good question. Let's check this out. Alan Bowman age. I did not spell that right. Oh, okay. So I'm older than Alan Bowman by a month and a half, 2 months.
Oh
my God.
So we're boys, man. That photo at media days was so funny, dude.
That was amazing.
Well, there was a quick Alan Bowman story, which is a weird segment, but at media days, there was a group of dudes talking to Alan Bowman, prepping the season. Ollie Gordon over here, and I caught like a little just a window where I looked right at the dude through like 3 people. He looks back at me and he points at me. And he's like, "My brother, my guy, you and me." I was like, "Yes, sir, dude." Came up to him and talked to him and snapped the pic. It was pretty great. So shout out Alan Bowman for that one, man.
Let's go.
That's a good dude.
That.
He would
he's
make
good in my book. Then
I've thought about it for a while. He would make one hell of like a Barstool personality or like a podcast host for a college football show that's like having fun, drinking. Alan Bowman would kick ass at that.
That's
Hell
awesome.
Yeah.
That is
Plant my
awesome.
flag on that team right now.
Okay, now my third and final Big 12 game. I'm going Baylor -3 versus TCU, who's surprisingly 5-3. We kind of poo-pooed on TCU, but that the total on that is 64.5. Oh my God. The number
points.
on that is insane. But I'm going to go Baylor -3, home game, Waco, ESPN2 night game. Yeah, give me that. And then my national game. It's really the only ranked on ranked matchup this week.
Well, it's not the only.
I think
SMU
Pitt.
Pitt.
Yeah, that's a sneaky game. But I'm going Buckeyes -3.5 in Beaver Stadium in Happy Valley. You know, Drew Aller being a little banged up is giving me ick vibes. How do the kids say it? It's giving ick.
It's giving you the ick.
Not the ick. It's just giving ick. So yeah, Will Howard. It's a homecoming game for my boy, Big Bill Butcher. Give me the Buckeyes -3.5. Everybody that listens to this podcast that knows me from the state of Ohio is loving that. And now my Sickos game. I don't know what this rivalry is called. South Florida versus Florida Atlantic. I think it's the Boca Bowl or whatever, something like that.
That's an actual bowl game.
Whatever. Florida Atlantic +3. They haven't won a conference game. They're going to stick it to the Bulls. Let's go, Owls. Hoot, hoot.
Hooty hoot. Hooty hoot. What is that? Like, what's the interstate there? There's a highway that takes you from Tampa.
What does Rick Ross always talk about in his song?
It's State Highway 60. The battle is State Highway 60.
How about that?
What an amazing name. You have to go through, this is fun fact, you have to go through a town called Yeehaw Junction in order to get from Tampa to West Palm Beach.
You're making that up.
No,
I'm
not.
That up.
I'm not.
Dude,
I'm going to share my screen.
At the Yeehaw function, dude.
I'm going to share my screen. You have to go through a town called Yeehaw Junction. Let me just zoom in here. There it is in all of its glory. Yeehaw Junction.
Oh my God.
They have a mud park.
They have to have the best beer there. Outside of Annie Mae's, second best beer.
And that was a phenomenal plug. Your Sickos game was USF at FAU. You're muted.
Tough.
Sorry, Charlie Brown. Yes, Florida Atlantic is at home. They're 4-4, 0-3 in conference play.
And the line was what?
+3 for Florida Atlantic.
Okay.
Home dog, baby.
Amazing. Amazing. So Matt will be tweeting out his picks as he has done the last 3 weeks because he's traveling. So Joe, go ahead and kick us off with your locks for the week.
Yes, sir. Well, usually you'd be a little concerned if you and Chef perfectly line up. I'm jumping on the bandwagon this week. Me and Chef are pretty locked in this week. I'm going to kick it off with Big 12 games. I am also rolling with Texas Tech plus 13.5. And I think the thing is Will Hammond can play football. That boy can play football. He's a young kid, true freshman kid. Kid can throw the ball. At media days earlier this offseason, Joe McGuire talked about it and said, hey, that kid is going to be a special quarterback. Some of the things I've already seen him done have exceeded my expectations already. That kid can play. I like him a lot. I saw
ugly as sin. He's ugly, but
he's not a good-looking dude,
throw a
but
ball.
we love him. I can respect that. But the thing I saw this week on Twitter, well, not this week, it was like today. I thought McMurphy tossed something up about Baron Morton looking strong at practice. Maybe that just means he's jacked and getting his work in, but I will be stoked regardless of which quarterback plays. I think they're within 13.5 points of Iowa State. I think Iowa State, like Chef said, they let teams hang around. They let Houston hang around for 3 quarters. They let XYZ team. I mean, it took a miracle for them to win a late game last week or 2 weeks ago, excuse me. I think it'll be interesting to see how they come out, but I will take Tech plus 13. I'm going to do it, folks. Give me K-State minus 13 in Houston. Give me the Cats, baby. We're rolling for the Cats. I mean, what are we doing? Cats are winning that game 42-0, talking about it now. But in all seriousness, yeah, give me K-State minus 13 at Houston. And my third game for the Big 12 slate, I'm also rolling with Chef on the OSU plus 3 bandwagon. Arizona State. I know Cam Scadabo talked about it and how this game matters to him. They lost the previous season. Arizona State lost hosting Oklahoma State last year before Oklahoma State went on their run. I still think there's that little element of what's it going to take for this team just to pop back. Give me the Bowmanator plus 3. I'll take Oklahoma State there. National game, I am still sticking with Chef. I trust the process. In my national narrative here, Ohio State's going to make the college football playoff. K-State's going to make the college football playoff. They're going to match up Avery Johnson versus Will Howard. To win this game, to get there, you have to win this football game, most likely. Give me Ohio State minus 3.5 in that game, or 3, whatever it was at. I think it was 3.5, maybe.
3.5.
I got it at 3.5. 3.5.
3.5. And then my sickos game here. Go ahead and give me Tulsa plus 3 at UAB.
Oh, God.
Yeah,
we picked the same game. Let's go.
Let's go. Hey, I'm
true
one of the fellas this week, man.
That is a true sicko game. God damn.
Sicko game. Give me Tulsa. The boys are ready to roll this week. The pregame speech was delivered already in advance. The boys are ready to roll.
Yeah, so that comeback they had versus UTSA was absolutely insane. I think they were down like 42-13 in like the middle of the third quarter and came back and won that game without overtime. Insanity.
That's what I'm talking about. That's my kind of team right there.
This matchup is ridiculous. It's a 3. What is it? It's a 3-5 Tulsa team versus a 1-6 UAB team. I think UAB is. Are they 0 in conference play?
Is that Trent Dilfer?
Yes,
Dilfer's still there.
They're 0-4 in conference play, and Tulsa's 1-3 in conference play. So this piqued my interest. I saw it. I said, this is my sickos game for this week. So I'll go ahead and spoil that for you. My sickos game, I'll go in reverse order. Why not? My sickos game, I've got Tulsa plus 3 at UAB against the Fighting Trent Dilfers. My national game, I'm going opposite of the two of you. I'm going Penn State plus 3.5 versus Ohio State. It's Happy Valley, dude. And Andy Kotelnicki, shout out to Aggieville Alley Cats and Ace Edwards. Andy Kotelnicki has a knack for making backup quarterbacks look as good as the starter, regardless of how good or bad they are. And if we've seen the progression of what he's done with Drew Aller alone, in addition to Jason Bean, Jalen Daniels, blah, 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 and you name it, Cole Ballard, you name the quarterback, he's made him look like absolute legendary status every time he's been the OC with them. So I like Penn State, and Will Howard's going to, I don't know, maybe he's putting a little bit too much on this matchup because Penn State didn't recruit him out of high school.
And so, can I say something before you go to your Big 12 slate about the Penn State Ohio State game? That is so crazy that the TV partners have ruined college football to the point where this should be a absolute whiteout game at night in Happy Valley, one of the biggest matchups they've had all year, except they gave the freaking whiteout night game to Penn State versus Michigan State. Like, what are we doing, TV partners, that you can't, and they can't even call it a whiteout anymore because the NHL like took like some branding thing away from them where they can't call it a whiteout.
I think it's
so
just
ridiculous.
The Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah. It's so stupid. I hate that this game has to be played at noon. This should be the primetime night game, whiteout game for Penn State, but that's another soapbox.
I like the passion. I love the enthusiasm. I don't care about Big Ten football, but I love the enthusiasm from you coming from Big Ten country. I mean, Joe, you're in Big Ten country too, but I'm not seeing the enthusiasm for the Big Ten that you have, or that Chef has rather.
There's not many around me that are passionate about the Big Ten, even though we're in Minnesota. I mean,
the PJ Fleck fans, they're not wearing their quarter zips and their little.
You see a couple of quarter zips up here. You don't see many PJ Fleck fans though.
Because I'm a quarter zip guy, but I don't wear it over a like button up shirt and tie.
Yeah,
with a like a triple Windsor knot or whatever he has under there. He's got like the biggest, bulkiest tie knot I've ever seen in my entire life. But this isn't a fashion pod.
Hey, it could be next week.
It could be next week. All right, Big 12 games. I've got Arizona State -3 at Oklahoma State. I love my guy Cam Scattaboo. I've got, spoiler alert for Big 12 fantasy, I've got a pretty hefty Arizona State contingent starting for me in this matchup. So I'm kind of going all in. All my chips are on the table on the Sun Devils. Forks up against the Pokes. They're going to start 0-6 in conference play. It's going to be amazing. Baylor -3 I've got versus TCU I would not have ever picked Baylor in this matchup even 2 weeks ago. I probably wouldn't have done that. Have they turned a corner? I mean, what's happening there? I don't know what's happening there. Dave Aranda, he's kind of swagging around a little bit now.
That Robertson kid can throw that ball around, baby.
He's got some legs too.
Good. I don't know. Baylor's cooking. They're cooking right now. I've got them -3 against TCU in the Revivalry because that's what it should be called, and I refuse to call it anything else.
Not the Blue Bonnet battle for you?
No, those words don't get spoken on this podcast. Blue Bonnets represent the Hill Country anyway. Neither of those teams are in the Hill Country, so get out of here. UCF, I have -6.5 versus the University of Arizona Wildcats, who are totally cooked this season. Not the UCF.
What is UCF then?
The UCF's any better, but this is a sicko battle within the Big 12 of 2 1-4 teams in conference play.
Yeah,
going head to head. Someone's going to come out with their second victory in conference play in this matchup, and I don't think it's going to be Arizona. I just don't. UCF is the bounce house. They got the home field advantage.
There's nobody in that bounce house anymore. That is an deflated bounce house.
QB4, he looked decent last week.
QB4, holy
QB4,
crap.
man. I can't tell you his name.
Does he have Cam Newton similarities too, like the other guys? Or
no, he's a smaller white dude, and he plays kind of like Plumlee did last year. See what happens, I guess.
Okay.
I think he's wearing 10 as well. Unless I'm crazy.
Number 10. This is the Citronaut game too, isn't it?
Citronauts, baby.
I think it might be.
Golly.
Citronaut game. This is the space game. UCF doesn't lose the space game.
Dylan Rizek.
He got that Riz, baby. He's rizzing him up. He's the Rizzler.
Freshman from Delray Beach, Florida.
Ooh. What was the space game in 2023? Who did they play in that?
Wasn't it the Oklahoma State game? I think
Oklahoma State.
Yeah, that was a crazy
love those
game.
jerseys, man.
So they did lose. They did lose that. They did lose that game, but that's the only space game they've lost.
UCF beat.
I thought they beat them by a lot, didn't they? That was
they beat the hell out. Yeah, they beat the hell out of Oklahoma State last year.
It was so long ago. I forget.
It was like 38-3, I think.
Yeah, it was bad. Shut down Ollie Gordon.
I just think about the Baylor. I don't know. I didn't watch much of UCF last year, so I don't remember. And I just remember that Oklahoma State started the season bad, and they had 3 losses. They were 9-3, so they lost to South Alabama.
Yeah, it
Texas.
was 45-3 UCF over Oklahoma State last year.
Oh my god! You know who's
Yeah,
going
they
to
don't
lose
lose the space-
45-3 this week?
They're not going to lose the space game. I would put an alternate spread of 15.5 on UCF.
Whoa.
Love it.
Do it. Big money.
I
know I'm gonna lose in fantasy this week because literally all my players are on bye.
And
Nice.
don't look now, but the standings in fantasy right now, it's a tie. So
It
little you know who, me, Bob
Yeah.
Trollsby, is now tied with you at the top of the standings with a record of 4-5 on the season. And Chef, I'm not sure how you were planning on doing tiebreakers, but I do have a score
Yeah.
differential at the bottom. And I'm currently with 743 points sitting on top in total points for my team.
Your team's been cooking, dude. And I feel bad because I have no players to play. I don't have anybody.
Well,
to
in
play.
2 weeks, none of us are going to have players to play, which
Exactly.
you're also aware of. But oh man, so you and I are 4-5 on the season. Matt is 1-8, which
God dang.
he has literally no way that he can even come back at this point. I don't think he would need to win a lot, and we would need to both lose. So the odds are against him because both of us have to lose. He has to beat both of us. And Joe, you were 0-1 on the week. You didn't have a bad week though. You got
No.
second place.
Big Will Ancio touchdown there on a whim.
Big Willie style. So
Right.
to go through each team, I won 111 points, almost 112, 111.98 points. Jake Retzloff was 26 points on the day. Tet McMillan with 36.72 after Chef called that he would have 200 plus yards receiving in that matchup.
The boy is good. I am good, man.
Just
Chef
nailed it.
Radamus, man.
Absolutely nailed Chef Stradamus. Joe got second on the week with a 69.6.
Very nice.
This is what
Nice.
we should have done was matchups last week because we actually had 4 teams. But you got second. So your leading point getter was Brendan Sorsby, the man, the myth, the legend. Brendan Sorsby, 20 points on the night. You finished with a very nice 69.6 points.
Nice.
Will Ancio, honorable mention. Shout out to him. Chef, you got third with 60.78 points. Your leading point getter was RJ Harvey with 27.7. And you did get a whopping 7 points from the Oklahoma State defense to boot.
They suck.
And
suck so bad.
Matt was last. 51.36 points. His leading point getter was Josh Hoover, who is pretty good quarterback to have, to be honest with you, 21.76 points. And he had a whopping 1.2 from Malik Carr of Houston. All right, guys, who are you starting this week and why?
Well, I have no choice, but I'm going to start Baron Morton at quarterback. Hopefully he's back. Hopefully he's as strong as everybody's saying he is.
Oh,
I have no running backs to play because I've used up all of RJ Harvey's eligibility, and Donaldson and Neal are both on buys. So I'm punting. I am literally punting this week on the season. I have nobody to play. I could literally make up a name and just put them
games.
Huh?
There's only 4 games this weekend.
That's what I'm saying.
There are
I have
only
no
8 teams in action. Like half of the players are accounted for.
I got Jalen Noel at receiver. Hopefully he has a monster game. And then I'm going Garrett Oakley but he's banged up. I don't even know if he's going to play. That sucks. And then Oklahoma State's defense. This is going to be a record low in terms of points.
I have a proposition for you if Joe hasn't already taken him. If this is a blowout game, you may get more points out of Taquan Roberson than you will out of Baron Morton.
You might, to be honest.
What are you saying right now?
I'm saying I'm giving you the option to put in Taquan Roberson.
I'm not worried about quarterback. I'd rather stick with Baron Morton than I would having CJ Donaldson on a bye. give me a chance at another running back, for God's sakes. I don't care about quarterback.
Well, if you're on a bye, you can sub in someone else.
Oh, I can?
Yeah,
Pick somebody up.
We've done that all season.
Have we?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Matt
then-
was the first one to do it. He dropped Drake Dabney for Joe Royer of Cincinnati in week 7.
Okay, well then that changes things. That changes things a lot.
I mean, I would love for you to start CJ Donaldson, but
Do I? Dang. Go pick somebody else's lineups, and I'm gonna find a running back to play.
All right.
Joe,
I
go
might
ahead.
need to hit the waiver wire this week because I have one quarterback that's on a bye and one running back that's on a bye.
You pick whoever you
Yeah,
want.
you
brother.
honestly you get to pick anyone who isn't
Sweet.
on one of our rosters. And that includes guys who are like struck through on our roster.
okay.
We've already started.
Yeah.
All right.
And
know what?
if you don't have the spreadsheet, I can send it to you.
No, I'm looking at it. I was getting my team up earlier. That's why I was looking off this one. I was trying to decide my team ahead of time.
Ooh.
You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna do it. Go ahead and give me, because I think this game is gonna be high scoring, even if it doesn't seem like that on paper. Give me the duo of Alan Bowman at quarterback. Going with the Bowmanator. I think he's gonna throw for 350 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 3 picks. Naturally. And I'll take his wideout as well, and I'll go with Dejon Stribling.
Okay.
I'll take that out there. I think that's probably the play here. As far as running backs, I can't remember which running back I had last week. If it was Corey Kiner or who I rolled with last week.
You
You
went
had
with
Xavier
Micah
Hudson.
Bernard.
Or yeah, Micah.
Oh,
Bowman.
yeah, for
Yeah.
Utah. I'm going to flip that, and I'm going to go with wait a minute. Am I insane? Hold on. I might be insane, folks. Let me pivot quarterbacks here. Let me pivot actually to Sawyer Robertson. What am I saying?
Sawyer.
Looking at the board now, probably the right play.
Sawyer. I think Sawyer is officially the first Baylor athlete we have on any
I
roster.
had DeQuan Finn, but he
Oh, yeah.
never touched the field.
That's right.
As far as receiver goes, let me see if I need to pivot that at all. You know what? I see Kobe Hudson scratched out from Matt's team. Shout out
Kobe.
Fireball Matt.
Yeah,
I'll jump
Kobe
in with
Hudson would be
Kobe
takeable.
Hudson as wide receiver 1 here.
All right, Kobe Hudson it is.
Running back, I'm going to go with what did I have written down? I'm going to go with Quale Conley for Arizona. I do not know what to expect of UCF yet. I know they've played enough games that I expect them to be bad, but I just feel like this game's going to have to come down to somebody on Arizona running the football and somebody on UCF throwing the football. Convertedly, that's the way I'm feeling that's going to happen, especially after T-Mac put up 200 yards last week. There's going to be some heavy coverage sending out that way. I'm rolling with my guy, Big Will Ancio, again at the tight end position.
Okay.
Man's on a hot streak. He's finding the end zone, looking good. Go ahead, give me the B-ball player up there, and then stick with BYU defense. Wait,
Okay.
BYU's not playing this week.
So to confirm, you're flipping from Alan Bowman to Sawyer Robertson.
Yes.
Smart
Okay.
man. Smart man.
Okay.
Sorry, defensively, I guess BYU's not playing. Let me look at this again. Which defense is available here, folks? What we got? I'll go with Iowa State defense. Looks like they're available.
Hey, I like it. I'm
Thank you.
also switching my running back to Carson Hansen from Iowa State.
Nice.
I might have mixed up the colors on those.
Oh, that's okay.
Bob.
I got you.
So fix that for
Just
me.
format painter. There we go. Format painter. Sold.
Mobile's a little different, so whatever.
Yep.
But
And,
yeah,
and you're not doing BYU's defense, Joe. Who was it again?
Iowa State.
Iowa State's defense.
That's
Hopefully.
I mean
That's
The
kind
fact
of a
that-
solid team right there.
the
That's
fact
a
that none of
damn
us
good
have
team.
Iowa State's defense is kind of hilarious right now.
BYU and Iowa State free agents.
Oklahoma State's defense it's literally cost me so many games. I honestly had a better showing at least once this year from Colorado's defense early in the season.
And we were joking about it too at the time. We
Yes.
were like,
Uh,
"You really want to take Colorado's defense in that matchup?" It was week 2. It was week 2.
4 weeks ago they
Who were they
gave me
playing week 2?
negative 2
Nebraska?
points.
was that the
Yeah,
Nebraska
that
week?
was the Nebraska.
Yeah, that
game.
was the Nebraska game.
Oh,
Oof.
Joe listens to the podcast. Shout out to my boy.
yeah.
Pod here, man. Pod listener.
So this week it's the Arizona State special. I'm going with the Sun Devils in 3 out of my 4 spots that I can choose because these are all guys that are already on my team. And the other player that's not an Arizona State player is from Arizona.
Let's
So,
go.
I've got Sam Levitt starting at quarterback because apparently he's been cleared to play against Oklahoma State. So I'm really rolling the dice on
Big
that
time.
one. But I had to pick someone up off of waivers because every other quarterback's on a bye or out, and we have
Or
2
Alan
weeks at the
Bowman.
end of the season. Yeah, or Alan Bowman. We've got 2 weeks at the end of the season where none of us are going to have players at all, but we have yet to determine what we're going to do. So stay tuned.
I'm going to throw it out there because if anybody's listening to this game, throw it in the comments. What do you think we should do? I think we should go national. I think we should pick up national players and do it just like DraftKings, where you could pick any player, even if we have copies of players. Like I might pick Will Howard, you might pick Will Howard. It doesn't matter.
No.
I think that's what
I've
we
got a
should do.
theory. I've got a theory.
Oh, a film theory.
Fired
I've got
up.
a film theory. Dumb fantasy football idea. Whenever my brother and I play each other, and if it's not important, we'll sit our entire team on the bench or drop. And once the season's over, it's playoffs, whatever. Won't just be those guys like mid-season. You get to hold on to one player that's a skill position player. Can't be a quarterback, can't be a defense. Has to be receiver, running back, tight end. Straight up, one-on-one, one guy in the league, and then whoever wins it wins. So it could be a Will Ancio versus a Dejan Stribling, or whatever the case is. And you're just grinding with one dude each week. So
That's funny.
tossing that out there for the co-kids to think about.
So my thought process with this is we scrap the lineups. You go 2 weeks where it's any Big 12 player is totally available and it's just Big 12 still. And we can't pick this because in every other fantasy league, you can't pick each other's players. You can't pick the same one. And you ride with that team for 2 weeks. And that's what you get. And so you gotta kind of place your bets on like, okay, I think Rocco Becht and Iowa State are gonna, play well maybe in the second to last game, maybe not in the last game, who knows, but you kind of have to hedge your bets.
Yep.
Well,
Hey.
I think we should leave it to the Coke heads. We should leave it to the fans. What do they think?
Absolutely.
I mean, if anybody replies to this, if it's just one person, they're the deciding vote.
There we go. So going with the Arizona State theme, Cam Scadaboo's my guy at running back. I think this is my last start I get for him. So it better be a good one. I'm hoping for a good one. Against Oklahoma State, probably going to be a good one. I'm going with T-Mac, Tet McMillan, Arizona. He's going to be my guy at wide receiver. I think this might also be my last start for him. So I'm exhausting my fumes here with T-Mac, Cam Scadaboo.
Left.
Shimon Mateer I have at tight end, and that's also my last start for him. So I'm just riding on fumes with these three guys, these four guys, and then K-State's defense is going to get me the victory.
No, you get 6 starts with tight ends, brother.
I do. That's my 6th start for Shimon Mateer.
1, 2,
and I have one more start
3,
for Brant
4.
Keithy.
I only count 5, brother Bear.
Well, we'll talk about that off pod. Anyway, any final thoughts? I know we've already covered pretty much everything, but any final thoughts before we break here?
Yeah, I've had so much fun, Joe, being on the podcast. Matt will be back soon, I think. And I mean, Joe, you're more than welcome anytime.
Fellas, I appreciate it, man. It's always a good time.
And I wish we would have gotten a hoops chat, but we did the podcast in reverse. But and we're already at an hour and 14 minutes. Otherwise, I would just let you guys cook on that. But that's going to do it for us today. Before we sign off, we do want to make a quick ask of everyone listening or watching this episode. So Joe is on here. Joe, big YouTube guy, the biggest YouTube guy. We are just 25 subscribers away from being able to monetize. So we can do super chats. You can do all sorts of crazy stuff once we get to 500 subscribers. We're just 25 subs away from that. So if you want to be a sub of Cocaine Willie, you can do that and hit that subscribe button. There was a little bit of innuendo in that whole discussion that I just had there, but it would be a tremendous help to us if you could take just 5 seconds to do that for us. Once again, we appreciate all the Coke heads. Give us 5-star reviews. Give us less than 5-star reviews if you're so inclined for whatever reason. Just tell us why. We want to know why. We've had a lot of people flip their reviews from 1 stars or 2 stars to 5 stars lately. It's been kind of nice. So
flip season.
It's flip season. I mean, hopefully not for Lincoln Cure, but it's flip season when it comes to YouTube reviews and Apple Podcast reviews. So please do that. And shout out to our sponsors, Pat's Beef Jerky and Anime's Parlor. Remember to visit patsbeefjerky.com and use the promo code CATS for 10% off your next order. And we are the K-State representative on the College Huddle, which is the largest community of fan-driven content in the nation. Check them out at thecollegehuddle.com and follow them on social media at College Huddle. Last but not least, you can follow our show at Cocaine Willie on YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, or Instagram, or follow us individually. I'm at Bob Trollsby. Chef is at Chef Andre Napier. Fireball Matt is somewhere over the Atlantic across the pond, and Joe Tillery is at Tillery_Joe. Chef.
Cocaine's a hell of a drug, baby.
We are all Coke and no joke. Please subscribe to us and to Joe. Joe is at Joe Tillery on YouTube and Tillery_Joe on Twitter.
Great page.
Wildcat Country.
Let's ride, dude. Let's go. Let's fucking go.